There is some major turmoil taking place inside the Supreme Court, Harry Litman, and it's on the issue that you and I have been discussing on our various hot takes with some of these liberal justices saying, can you please stop granting these stays for Donald Trump and claiming you're preserving the status quo when you're actually injuring people that the Trump regime is inflicting pain on? If you want to preserve the status quo, stop allowing Trump to unlawfully inflict the pain or inflict the pain on the people. Let it go through its normal judicial process. Let us eventually hear the case as it goes up through the normal process of the appeals up to finally the Supreme Court, and stop using this kind of shadow docket stay power that you're actually making substantive rulings that are harming people's lives and killing people's lives. I mean, the case from the end of this past week, Harry, the headline was how the Trump regime basically pushed this revocation of the temporary protected status of the Cubans, Venezuelans, and Haitians, about 500,000 more people who were given this parole status, as it's called under the statute, to be here in the United States by former President Biden. And they all said that their families said, nope, we're voting, a lot of them, that their families were going to vote for Trump because Trump was never going to hurt us. It was only going to be the criminals. Well, one of Trump's first move was to attack these Cubans, Venezuelans, and Haitians. And now it's impacting 500,000 of them who could basically be subject to deportation very quickly now as a result of this order. So let me just give some of the procedural history. Then let me get into what this turmoil is in the Supreme Court. So you had groups that were representing this Cuban, Venezuelan, and Haitian population filed a lawsuit first in the District Court of Massachusetts when Donald Trump issued an executive order removing their protected status. They won a stay, a temporary injunction in the district court level, where basically what the district court said is, look, Homeland Security, if you want to change Biden's policy, you can change Biden's policy and you can deport these people, but you can't just do them all at once arbitrarily and capriciously. You got to go case by case and at least create some justification before you change someone's entire life status and immediately send them. So do an interview or do something, but the way you did this executive order, blanket deportation, not cool with. Trump immediately rushes to the First Circuit. The First Circuit says, we're not dealing with this because just go through the process that the district court did. If you want to do individualized assessments, whatever. But then Trump really, rather than kind of filing the fulsome appeal, really ignored the First Circuit, went right to the Supreme Court and said, please, Supreme Court, can you stay? Can you block? Can you stop what the district court just ruled? Because we want to send these people right away. And we are facing irreparable harm as the Trump administration because Trump's the head of the country. He wants them gone. This is a major agenda. That's our irreparable harm. And we have a probability of success on the merits because the executive branch is able to change prior executive branch policy, even if you don't like it, United States Supreme Court. So the United States Supreme Court made the ruling to stay or to put on pause the district court in Massachusetts, protecting these groups of people. So the stay, just to be clear, because we're talking stay, overrule the stay by the Supreme Court basically stops the district court's ability to protect this class of 500,000 immigrants, which basically means during the pendency of the litigation, Trump can deport these people, right, Harry? So now you have, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson saying what you and I have been saying all along, which is there's not irreparable harm from the government. If you want an injunction, if you want a stay from the Supreme Court, you have to show that you're irreparably harmed. She goes, the irreparable harm is the people who are about to be sent and lose their lives or get back to the dictatorships they fled from, not the Trump administration. So there's a broader issue that she brought in. And that's why Ketanji Brown Jackson and Justice Sotomayor spent 6 pages on this dissent, because They were pissed about this ruling by sending these migrants who were protected under the Biden administration back to the dictatorships they fled. But there's this broader issue, right? Stop these ridiculous stays all the time. Anytime Trump goes in and asks you to block what the district court's doing, you're doing it, and you're the one changing the status quo, not preserving it. Harry, what do you make of it all?
Yeah, so exactly. And this is what's going on just across the board. You'll have an obnoxious, maybe unconstitutional executive order. Someone will sue, and the first skirmish will be, does the district court put the brakes on very briefly or even somewhat briefly to decide things? That's how it's gone in the past. But now the Trump administration, sort of a one-trick pony, always takes it up and says emergency, and changed what they did, put a stay on what they did. Now, in order to get this kind of stay, you have to show 4 things, and you got to show them all. So there is likelihood of success on the merits. There is also irreparable injury. There is also balance of equities. Those 2 ones are the ones that have played out here. And the courts in general, and including the Supreme Court, can get really loosey-goosey. So, let me take back a little bit of a rewind to just last week. The overruling of Humphrey's executor, or as good as overruling, where the court, you're supposed to take the current law. The district court said, Humphrey's executor is the law, so you're not going to win. The Supreme Court could change that, but you're not going to win. And the Supreme Court really pulled up kind of a fast one, or at least a very loose one, where a majority of them said, well, I think we may change Humphrey's executor. I think we may overrule it. And that changed the calculus. But that was basically really bastardizing this first principle of who's going to win. And you got to show all 4. Now back to the case from today. It's true. And you've pointed out, unlike a lot of the stuff they're doing in the immigration area, this is one that is a matter of pretty big discretion in the executive. The Biden administration said, you 500,000 people from Cuba, other places in the Western Hemisphere, we're putting this in effect, so you can stay. We won't deport you. So it's true that a new administration could change that, but they can go through the whole thing. But this emergency kind of posture required them to show irreparable injury and balance of equities. And so what's Sotomayor and Jackson writing for Sotomayor said, irreparable injury, excuse me, the administration just kind of has to wait and we keep the status quo. They're not being irreparably injured. Let's talk irreparable injury. These 500,000 people who are going to be shipped away, that's irreparable injury. And let's talk about the public interest and balance of equities, because you need all 4 of them. And there's just no getting around it. It's a sort of, cross-cutting theme. They come to what's supposed to be these rare instances of changing the status quo by showing 4 things and all of them. And the courts just kind of get loose with it, up to and including the U.S. Supreme Court. So, they just haven't been punctilious, just as they weren't last year. And last week with Humphrey's executor. And so much of what they're trying to do, especially where immigrants are concerned, if they're permitted to do it temporarily while they figure it out, that's the whole ball game. By the time they really focus on things and decide how many of these 500,000 people will have been deported because the Supreme Court lets them do it, notwithstanding that they're the ones suffering the irreparable injury. So there's this casualness and kind of loosey-goosiness combined with the fact that this is the Trump administration's continual refrain, emergency, emergency, emergency. And if you get a sort of solicitous or, kind of sympathetic court and they bend these equitable, factors, then the bottom line is changed, not just temporarily, but in effect, permanently. And that's what's happened here.
Take a look at Justice Jackson's words. The court has plainly botched, that's strong words, botched this assessment. It requires next to nothing from the government with respect to irreparable harm, and it undervalues the devastating consequences of allowing the government to precipitously upend the lives and livelihoods of nearly 500,000 non-citizens while their legal claims are pending. Even if the government is likely to win on the merits, in our legal system, success takes time, and the stay standards requires more than anticipated victory. I would have denied the government's application because its harm-related showing is patently insufficient. The balance of the equities also weighs heavily in respondents' favor. While it is apparent that the government seeks a stay to enable it to inflict maximum pre-decision damage, court-ordered stays exist to minimize, not maximize, harm to litigating parties. And in layman's terms, what she's saying is that the plaintiffs who brought this action, the Cubans, the Venezuelans, the Haitians, and others, they were given legal status. They filed a lawsuit to protect their legal status. You may think that the Trump regime can ultimately win this court case because the executive branch has a lot of power to overturn what the prior executive branch does. But just merely saying that they're likely to win is not enough. Let them go and then win and prove their case. Things happen in litigation. We don't know what's going to happen in discovery. We don't know what's going to happen when depositions are taken. We don't know how a trial is ultimately going to play out. But judges, justices, you're handing the Trump regime basically a win because they're going to be able to do what they do when they're the ones who just precipitously changed the status quo from people who were here lawfully to unlawfully, and perhaps this is not the Supreme Court doesn't look to this kind of evidence, but to me, because that's just not what they do, but it's like a bait and switch. Trump told the Cubans for Trump and the Venezuelans for Trump and the Haitians for Trump to win the support of their family members who have the ability to vote. We got your back. We got your family here. We're taking care of them. We're not going after them. And so they relied on that in the election. And unfortunately, they voted for the guy who's now attacking them. Right. And now you're saying the status quo. Is Trump changing the status quo? What the hell are you doing? So I'll let you want to finish.
Yeah, so look, that's exactly right. And that's the important theme here. Fine, we'll litigate it, but it's not supposed to be, first of all, it's not supposed to be at all easy, usually illegal for Trump, as he's trying to do again and again, to just wave his executive wand and change the law. But more generally, courts, there's a reason the Supreme Court has oral argument and briefs and really works it through and plays it off against each other. Also, district courts take, as you were just saying, and discovery depositions and, go through both fact and legal process. It's not supposed to be easy. In fact, it's supposed to be damnably hard for a court to just say, well, we'll change things now, even though I haven't gone through the process. We'll let it go, and it's almost like verdict first, and then process after. This is supposed to be super rare and not, as Jackson says, not just a prediction that it might change. If that's your prediction, fine. Let's see if the prediction plays out. But you've got to show other things that if we don't change it on you, grievous things will happen on the ground and the ballot, all these things supposed to be so rare and for good reason. Courts do things methodically through briefs. They think it through. That's how the whole system. And this is in effect just short circuiting that system. It's fine to do in rare instances where all these factors have been shown. It's not fine to do otherwise. And a lot of courts, and including the U.S. Supreme Court, does. So it's just simply, like like playing exhibition games or something, but making it real results. That's probably not the best analogy, but you see the point. This is not supposed to be controlling, except in very rare instances. And now, just as you say, those 500,000 people can expect knocks on the door, even though the court hasn't determined that what Trump is trying to do is lawful.
Everybody subscribe to the Talking Feds YouTube channel, the Talking Feds podcast, and the Talking Feds Substack. Everywhere you get your news, Talking Feds is there. Subscribe to the YouTube Talking Feds podcast and Substack. Thanks, Harry.
Thanks, Ben.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.